Hey guys, tonight we slip through the fog-choked streets of Victorian England, where gas lights flicker and the air smells of coal smoke and secrets. Picture yourself dodging horse-drawn cabs, your boots clicking on damp cobblestones, as you peek into apothecary shops and hushed parlors. Here, behind closed curtains, people are tinkering with curious contraceptive inventions. Devices and potions so odd, you'll wonder how anyone kept a straight face. This isn't just history, it's a parade of awkward ingenuity, and you probably wouldn't survive the embarrassment of buying these things in 1880s London. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in London, 1870s, a city buzzing with steam engines, top hats, and a population boom that's got everyone twitchy. Victorian England's obsessed with propriety. Skirts cover ankles, and indecent talk gets you shunned. But behind the lace gloves, folks are desperate to control family size. Birth rates are soaring, and cramped tenements can't handle more mouths. Enter the curious world of contraception, where inventors, quacks, and desperate couples cobble together solutions that range from clever to downright cringe-worthy. You're about to dive into a story of rubber, potions, and whispered secrets, all wrapped in a society that blushes at the word bedroom. Let's set the stage. The Industrial Revolution's in full swing, churning out factories and fortunes, but also poverty and overcrowding. A mainstream historical fact: by the 1870s, England's population has nearly doubled in a century, pushing families to seek ways to limit children without breaking social taboos. Contraception's not new. Ancient tricks like honey-soaked sponges existed, but Victorians are modernizing it with a mix of science and sheer audacity. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some early condoms were made from animal intestines, tied with ribbons like grim party favors. Imagine the shopkeeper's poker face selling those. Historians still argue whether these devices were widespread or mostly for the bold, but you're already sensing the awkwardness. You pause outside an apothecary, its window glowing with bottles of female tonics and hygienic syringes. The shop smells of lavender and something sharper, carbolic acid maybe. A woman in a bonnet slips inside, eyes darting, clutching a shilling for something she'll never mention at tea. You follow, heart thumping, as the apothecary slides a discreet package across the counter. It's probably a rubber cap or a dubious potion, part of a growing underground market. You chuckle softly. Victorians were so prim, yet here they are, inventing ways to dodge babies while pretending it's all about health. Modern sex ed classes owe these pioneers a nod, don't they? The streets alive with noise. Vendors hawk pies. A newsboy shouts about Parliament, and a distant church bell tolls. You think of those animal intestine condoms, ribbons and all, and wonder how anyone navigated the logistics without giggling. The fog's thickening, curling around gaslights, and you feel London's pulse, a city of progress and repression, where every contraceptive sale is a tiny rebellion against propriety. You're not just a bystander, you're part of this strange dance, where science, shame, and necessity collide. The apothecary door creaks shut, and you step back into the fog, ready to uncover more of Victorian England's peculiar inventions, each one a whisper in the shadows of this bustling, blushing world. You're still in London's fog, the apothecary's secretive exchange lingering like the scent of carbolic acid on your cloak. The cobblestones glisten under gaslights as you weave through a crowd of top-hatted gentlemen and bonneted ladies, their faces pinched with Victorian propriety. You're heading toward a bustling square where a street preacher rails against immorality, his voice a perfect backdrop for tonight's tale. How Victorian England's moral panic sparked a wave of bizarre contraceptive experiments. The air's thick with coal smoke and the faint whiff of roasted chestnuts, and you feel the city's tension. Prude on the surface, panic below, pulling you deeper into its curious drama. Victorian society was obsessed with morality, a mainstream fact driven by Queen Victoria's reign and the rise of evangelical fervor. By the 1870s, pamphlets and sermons warned that unchecked passions and large families threatened social order, especially among the poor. Contraception, though whispered about, became a battleground, a way to curb poverty, but a sin in the eyes of the pious. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some doctors claimed certain teas, like pennyroyal, could regulate fertility, though they often caused more nausea than prevention. Imagine sipping a bitter brew, hoping it's magic, only to spend the night hugging a chamber pot. Historians still argue whether these moral crusades stifled innovation or accidentally fueled it, but the square's energy screams desperation for solutions. You pause near the preacher, his spittle flying as he condemns unnatural practices. A few onlookers nod, but others, especially a young couple in threadbare coats, exchange furtive glances. They're probably thinking about the tenement they share with 6 kids, where another mouth means starvation. You catch a whiff of their unwashed wool and feel a pang. Victorian life wasn't all tea parties and crinolines. The couple slips away, maybe toward a chemist's shop for one of those dodgy teas or a rubber device advertised in hushed tones. You smirk. Navigating birth control in this era was like playing roulette with a corset on. The square's alive with hawkers selling pies and broadsheets, but you notice a man in a shabby topcoat slipping flyers under carriage wheels. You snag one. It's an ad for a hygienic lecture on family limitation, code for contraception. These lectures, often held in dingy halls, were where bold doctors and reformers pitched their wares, everything from sponges to mysterious pills. You chuckle softly, imagine sneaking into one, hoping for answers, only to hear a quack ramble about vital energies. Modern apps have nothing on Victorian hustle, do they? The flyer's paper is cheap, already smudged with mud, but it's a spark in the fog, proof that necessity trumps sermonizing. You think back to that apothecary, its discreet packages and ribbon-tied condoms, and see the bigger picture. Moral panic didn't stop contraception, it forced it underground, birthing inventions as creative as they were clumsy. The preacher's still shouting, but you notice fewer heads turning. London's too busy surviving to care. You spot a woman selling lavender, her eyes sharp, probably slipping contraceptive tips to customers along with her posies. Victorians were masters of the side hustle, weren't they? The fog swirls, muffling the preacher's voice, and you feel the city's pulse, a tug of war between shame and pragmatism, with inventors and desperate couples caught in the middle. You step away from the square, the preacher's rants fading into the clop of hooves and distant factory whistles. The couple you saw earlier is long gone, maybe clutching a pennyroyal tonic or a rubber cap, hoping it works. You wonder if they'll dodge the preacher's wrath or just the next pregnancy. London's fog wraps you tighter, its secrets humming in every alley. You're not just walking these streets, you're unraveling a world where morality sparked madness, and every contraceptive was a quiet rebellion. More curious inventions wait, tucked in shops and parlors, and you're ready to chase them through this smoky, blushing city. You've left the preacher's square behind, his moralizing rants swallowed by London's fog as you trudge along a bustling street, the clatter of horse hooves and vendor shouts filling the air. The scent of coal smoke mingles with fresh bread from a nearby bakery, but your nose twitches at a sharper whiff. Rubber, unmistakable, wafting from a discreet shop, tucked between a tailor and a tobacconist. You're stepping into the heart of the rubber revolution, where Victorian ingenuity transforms a sticky sap into one of the era's most game-changing contraceptive tools. The condom. The shop's window is frosted, its sign vague. Hygienic goods. But you know the secrets inside, and you're ready to peek into this stretchy chapter of Ur's dusty, blushing saga. The mainstream historical fact is that vulcanized rubber, perfected by Charles Goodyear in the 1840s, revolutionized contraception by the 1870s. Unlike those grim animal intestine condoms you chuckled over earlier, rubber versions were cheaper, more reliable, and, thankfully, less likely to involve ribbons. Factories churned them out, making birth control accessible to more than just the elite, though still a hush-hush purchase. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some early rubber condoms were reusable, washed and powdered like delicates, with instruction pamphlets that read like a mix of chemistry and prayer. Imagine the awkward laundry day, hoping the maid doesn't snoop. Historians still argue whether rubber condoms democratized family planning or just gave men more control, but the shop's nervous buzz suggests everyone wanted in. You slip inside, the bell jingling softly, and the air's thick with rubber and wax polish. A clerk, all whiskers and discretion, slides a tin box across the counter to a red-faced gentleman who mutters something about hygiene. You stifle a grin. Victorian euphemisms are gold, aren't they? The condoms inside, thin, stretchy, and faintly yellow, look like something from a mad scientist's lab, but they're a leap from sheep gut predecessors. You notice a pamphlet tucked nearby, promising safety and comfort if you follow the regimen. You imagine the poor guy puzzling over it by candlelight, praying he doesn't botch the reuse process. Modern disposables spoil us, don't they? The shop's shelves hold other rubber wonders, caps, syringes, even prototype diaphragms, all part of this industrial boom. You catch a whiff of the clerk's pomade, sharp against the rubber's tang, and feel London's pulse, progress wrapped in prudery. The gentleman pockets his tin and bolts, leaving you to browse. You spot a display of gentlemen's protectors, marketed with vague nods to marital health. The clerk's watching, so you don't linger, but you're struck by the sheer nerve of it all. Factories pumping out contraceptives while preachers scream sin 2 streets over. You think back to that pennyroyal tea. Bitter and useless rubber's a game changer, but it's still a gamble in a society that shuns the topic. Outside, the streets alive with costermongers hawking apples and a newsboy yelling about a factory strike. You recall the preacher's rants, his fear of unnatural practices, and wonder how he'd react to this rubbery rebellion. The fog's thinner here, letting gaslights cast wobbly pools of light, and you notice a woman in a plain shawl slip into the shop, her face hidden. She's probably after a cap or syringe, navigating the same shame-laced dance as the gentleman. You chuckle softly. Victorians were so buttoned up, yet here they are, buying stretchy solutions with straight faces. Jokes on them, though reusable condoms sound like a cleaning nightmare. You step away, the shop's bell jingling behind you. The rubber revolution's just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with moral panic and sneaky flyers. You feel the city's hum. Steam whistles, carriage wheels, whispered deals in alleys. More curious inventions wait, from quack potions to fiddly devices, each a defiance of London's blushing order. You're not just a bystander, you're chasing a story where science and secrecy collide, and every purchase is a tiny revolt. The fog curls around you, gaslights flicker, and you're ready to uncover the next peculiar piece of this smoky, stretchy tale. You've stepped out of the rubber shop, its chemical tang still tickling your nose as you weave through London's smoky streets, the fog swirling like a nosy ghost. The clatter of carriages and the cries of street vendors fade as you approach a shadier corner where a garish sign swings above a narrow door, Dr. Percival's Health Emporium. The air smells of cheap gin and something acrid, maybe vinegar, and you're about to dive into the world of Victorian quack doctors, peddling dubious contraceptive potions with all the charm of a carnival barker. The sign promises vitality for ladies, but you know it's code for birth control, and you're ready to cringe at the snake oil on offer in this blushing, bustling city. Quackery was rampant in Victorian England, a mainstream fact fueled by lax medical regulation in the 1870s, with proper doctors pricey and contraception taboo. Self-styled physicians filled the gap, hawking tonics and pills to desperate couples via ads in penny papers. These potions often promised to regulate or prevent, but most were useless, or worse, dangerous. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some quacks sold lunar pills, claiming they synced with the moon's phases to stop pregnancy, a nod to old folklore about lunar fertility. Imagine gulping a chalky pill under a full moon, hoping it's not just sugar. Historians still argue whether these quacks believed their own hype or were just cashing in on Victorian desperation, but the Emporium's greasy vibe screams profiteer. You push through the door, the bell jangling like a warning. Inside, the shop's dim, lit by flickering oil lamps, and shelves grown with bottles labeled Elixir of Chastity or Mrs. Winslow's Female Corrective. The air's thick with camphor and deceit, and a man in a stained frock coat, Drive Percival, presumably, eyes you like you're his next mark. A woman in a frayed shawl haggles over a vial of greenish liquid, her voice low, and you catch the word prevention. You wince. That potion's probably vinegar and herbs, more likely to sour her stomach than stop a baby. You smirk. Victorians were so gullible, yet who hasn't fallen for a dodgy ad? Modern miracle supplements aren't much better, are they? Dr. Percival launches into a spiel, waving a bottle and claiming it's endorsed by French physicians. You roll your eyes. The French always get blamed for fancy nonsense. The woman hesitates, then hands over a shilling, clutching her vial like it's hope itself. You think back to the rubber condoms. Stretchy and scientific, these potions are a step backward, dressed up as progress. The shop's walls are plastered with testimonials, fake, no doubt, praising cures for female irregularities. You chuckle softly, imagine the TripAdvisor reviews for this place. 1 star, still pregnant, but the bottle was pretty. You step closer, peering at a shelf of lunar pills, their label promising cosmic harmony. The quacks still talking, now pitching a syrup for marital balance, and you wonder how he sleeps at night, probably on a pile of shillings. The woman slips out, vial tucked in her shawl, and you feel a pang. She's betting her future on this junk, just like countless others. Those clay tablets from Sumer's justice system feel distant, but Victorian quacks are their own kind of law, preying on a city too proper to talk openly about birth control. The fog outside seeps under the door, and you sense London's pulse, shame and survival, tangled in every sail. You turn to leave, the bell jangling again, but Dr. Percival's voice follows, offering you a special tonic. You wave him off, stepping into the street's damp embrace. The quack's world is a grim sideshow, but it's part of Victorian England's contraceptive story, woven with rubber revolutions and moral panics. You hear a distant church bell, a reminder of the preachers who'd burn this shop down if they could. More curious inventions wait. Caps, sponges, maybe something even weirder, and you're ready to chase them through London's alleys, where every secret's a rebellion against its blushing order. The fog curls tighter, and you walk on, gaslights guiding you deeper into this peculiar tale. You've escaped the quack's dingy emporium, its vinegary stench still clinging to your cloak as you slip back into London's fog-draped streets. The gaslights cast wobbly glows, and the air hums with the clop of hooves and a distant barrel organ's wheeze. You're heading toward a discreet chemist's shop, its window glowing with amber bottles, and a sign promising ladies' requisites. Inside, Victorian women are quietly revolutionizing birth control with a fiddly little device, the cervical cap. The scent of lavender and wax polish wafts out, and you feel the city's pulse, prim yet rebellious, drawing you into this curious, blush-inducing chapter of Ur's smoky saga. Cervical caps were a real Victorian innovation, a mainstream fact tied to the era's growing interest in female-controlled contraception. By the 1870s, these small rubber or metal domes, designed to cover the cervix, were gaining traction among women who could afford a doctor's fitting. They were reusable, discreet, and a step up from dodgy potions, though insertion required nerves of steel and a mirror. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some caps came with ornate cases, like jewelry boxes, so women could hide them among their trinkets. Imagine stashing your birth control next to your cameo brooch. Victorian stealth at its finest. Historians still argue whether caps empowered women or just burdened them with more secrecy, but the shop's hushed vibe screams controversy. You step inside, the bell tinkling softly, and the air's warm, laced with antiseptic and rosewater. A matronly chemist, her apron crisp, speaks in low tones to a young woman clutching a velvet purse. The customer's cheeks are pink, but her jaws set. She's here for a cap, probably fitted by one of London's rare progressive doctors. You catch a glimpse of the device, a tiny rubber dome in a satin-lined case, and stifle a grin. It's like a teacup for your cervix. You think back to Dr. Percival's lunar pills, all hype and nausea. These caps are practical, but good luck explaining them at a sewing circle. Modern IUDs owe these pioneers a thank you, don't they? The chemist slides the case across the counter, murmuring instructions about hygiene and timing. You lean closer, catching phrases like daily checks and vinegar rinse, and wince. Victorian women were part contortionist, part chemist. The customer nods, tucking the case away, her eyes darting to the door. You feel London's weight, a city where a woman's choice is a secret heavier than her crinoline. The shop's shelves hold other requisites, syringes, sponges, even those rubber condoms from earlier. But the cap's the star, a quiet rebellion against sermons and tenement cribs. You chuckle softly, imagine the vicar's face if he knew what's in that purse. You notice a pamphlet on the counter. Its title coy, Marital Health for Modern Wives. It's code for contraception, and you bet it's stuffed with euphemisms. The chemist's voice drops lower, warning about improper use, and you wonder how many women fumbled this in candlelit bedrooms, cursing Victorian vagueness. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their clear-cut laws, feel like a distant dream. London's rules are unwritten, enforced by whispers and wagging fingers. The fog outside presses against the window, and you sense the city's contradictions. Progress in a box, shame in every glance. Jokes on the men preaching purity. They'd faint at this shop's inventory. The woman leaves, her purse heavier, her steps quick. You linger, watching the chemist polish a bottle, her face unreadable. You recall the preacher's rants, the rubber shop's stretchy wares, and see the pattern. Victorian contraception is a tightrope walk between science and scandal. The cap's a small victory, giving women a sliver of control. But it's no magic fix, not when society's watching like a nosy ant. The shop's warm glow fades as you step back into the fog, the street alive with hawkers and hurrying shadows. More curious inventions wait. Sponges, patents, maybe something wilder, and you're ready to chase them through London's alleys, where every secret's a defiance of its blushing, buttoned-up heart. You've left the chemist's shop, the faint rosewater scent of cervical caps fading as you plunge back into London's foggy maze, your boots scuffing wet cobblestones. The gaslights flicker, casting shadows that dance like gossiping silhouettes, and the air carries a mix of coal smoke and the briny whiff of the Thames. You're drawn to a dim parlor, in a narrow street, where a group of women huddle around a flickering lamp, their voices low as they discuss a curious contraceptive. The sponge. Not just any sponge, but one soaked in strange brews and superstition, blending Victorian science with folklore older than the city itself. The parlor smells of wax and damp wool, and you lean in, ready to unravel this soggy thread in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Sponges were a legitimate contraceptive method in Victorian England, a mainstream fact rooted in their use since ancient times, but refined in the 1870s. Women would soak small sea sponges in vinegar, lemon juice, or herbal concoctions, then insert them as barriers, hoping to block or kill sperm. They were cheap, reusable, and popular among those who couldn't afford rubber caps, though accuracy was anyone's guess. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some women believed soaking sponges in moonlit water, yes, actual moonlight, boosted their power, a nod to old wives' tales about lunar fertility. Imagine sneaking to a window at midnight, sponge in hand, praying for cosmic backup. Historians still argue whether these superstitions were widespread or just parlor gossip, but the women's whispers suggest they're not joking. You slip closer to the parlor window, the glass fogged with breath. Inside, a woman in a patched dress demonstrates, dipping a sponge into a bowl of vinegar and chamomile, her hands steady despite the other's nervous giggles. The room's cozy but tense, with teacups and half-darned stockings scattered around. Domestic cover for a rebellious act. You catch a whiff of the vinegar, sharp enough to make your eyes water, and wince. This is no spa treatment. You think back to the cervical cap's satin case, all prim and proper. These sponges are raw, earthy. Like the women using them, modern sponges might be fancier, but they've got nothing on this DIY grit, do they? One woman, older, with a face like weathered oak, shares a tip: add a drop of tansy oil for extra protection. You smirk. Tansy's toxic in large doses, and you hope she's got a steady hand. Another jokes about the moonlit soak, and the room laughs, but you see a few nod seriously. Superstition clings to these sponges like damp to wool, and you feel London's contradictions. A city of steam engines and starlit rituals, science and secrets mashed together. Those Sumerian river ordeals, with their divine tests, feel oddly close. Both eras leaned on faith when logic wobbled. You chuckle softly. Imagine explaining lunar sponges to a doctor today. Full moon, you say? Fascinating. The women pass the sponge around, inspecting it like a battle plan. You notice a younger one, barely 20, clutching her shawl, her eyes wide. She's probably new to this, navigating a world where a baby could mean ruin. The vinegar's fumes mix with the lamp's oily smoke, and you sense the stakes. Every sponge is a gamble against poverty and shame. The parlor's a safe haven, far from preachers' pulpits or quack doctors' lies, but it's still risky. If a nosy neighbor snitches, these women could face whispers or worse. You recall Dr. Percival's greasy tonics. All flash and no substance. These sponges, flawed as they are, feel like defiance in a teacup. You step back, the fog swallowing the parlor's glow. The women's voices fade, but their courage lingers, a thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with rubber condoms and lunar pills. The street's quiet now, save for a distant dog's bark and the Thames murmur. You wonder if that young woman will try the moonlit trick or stick to vinegar. More curious inventions wait. Patents, chemicals, maybe something wilder, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a rebellion against its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights dim, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, whispering tale. You've left the parlor's vinegar-soaked whispers behind, the fog wrapping you like a damp shawl as you navigate London's twisting streets. The gaslights sputter, their glow barely piercing the coal-scented haze, and the distant clatter of a hansom cab keeps time with your steps. You're drawn to a smoky office near the Strand, where inventors huddle over cluttered desks, their pens scratching out wild ideas for contraceptive devices. The air smells of ink, wax, and ambition, and you're about to dive into the patent frenzy that gripped Victorian England, churning out contraptions from springs to syringes that make your head spin. This is Ur's blushing saga, now buzzing with mechanical madness, and you're ready to peek at the blueprints. Patents for contraceptives exploded in the late 19th century, a mainstream fact tied to the Industrial Revolution's inventive fever. By the 1870s, Britain's patent office was flooded with applications for hygienic devices, code for birth control, ranging from rubber caps to intricate gadgets promising marital safety. Inventors, often engineers or doctors, saw contraception as a lucrative puzzle, even if society blushed at the topic. Here's the quirky tidbit. One 1880s patent described a spring-loaded uterine shield, a contraption so complex it required a manual and, presumably, a degree in mechanics to use. Imagine wrestling with springs in a candlelit bedroom. Romance killer, much. Historians still argue whether these patents were practical or just cash grabs for a taboo market, but the office's chaos suggests a bit of both. You slip inside, the door creaking under a sign reading Patent Consultancy. The room's a mess, blueprints strewn across tables, a model of something with tubes and levers teetering on a shelf. Two men in waistcoats argue over a sketch, one jabbing a finger at what looks like a syringe with extra nozzles. You catch a whiff of their tobacco, sharp against the wax, and stifle a grin. These guys are dead serious about their bedroom gizmos. You spot a patent draft for a hygienic pessary, a rubber ring with a silk net, and wince. Insertion sounds like a trust fall with physics. You think back to the vinegar sponge. Earthy and simple, these contraptions are over-engineered nightmares. Modern apps would have saved these inventors a headache, wouldn't they? One inventor, all whiskers and wild eyes, rants about his automatic regulator, a device with bellows, yes, bellows, meant to cleanse and protect. You chuckle softly. Bellows belong in a blacksmith's forge, not a boudoir. The other man counters with a simpler idea, a rubber cap with a tiny valve. You admire the restraint, but the patent's still pending, buried under London's red tape and moral side-eyes. The office hums with urgency, as if these men know their work's both vital and scandalous. You recall the quack's lunar pills, all hype and chalk. These patents aim higher, but good luck convincing a vicar they're hygienic. Jokes on the inventors, their gadgets might outlive their reputations, tucked in museum drawers, labeled curious. You wander to a desk piled with rejected patents, including one for a magnetic shield, claiming to disrupt vital forces. You roll your eyes. Victorians loved their pseudoscience, didn't they? The fog presses against the windows, and you feel London's pulse, a city of steam and secrets, where every blueprint's a gamble against shame. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their clear laws, feel like a distant cousin. These patents are murkier, dodging censors while chasing progress. You imagine a woman puzzling over a spring-loaded pessary, cursing its manual, and wonder how many of these devices ever left the drawing board. You step back into the street, the office's buzz fading behind you. The patent frenzy is just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with sponges, rubber condoms, and moral panics. The fog swirls, muffling a newsboy's cry, and you sense the city's contradictions: innovation in shadows, propriety in daylight. More curious inventions wait, maybe chemical brews or clandestine catalogues, and you're ready to chase them through London's alleys. The gaslights flicker, the Thames murmurs, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, ink-stained tale of a city that blushed, but never stopped inventing. You've left the patent office's mechanical chaos behind, its blueprints and bellows fading as you step back into London's fog-soaked streets. The gaslights cast feeble glows, and the air's heavy with coal smoke and a faint metallic tang, like pennies left in the rain. You're drawn to a bustling apothecary on a busy corner, its windows crammed with bottles promising health and vigor. The real draw, though, is the back counter, where chemists dispense risky contraceptive douches, chemical brews, sold as safe, but often more dangerous than the quack's lunar pills. The shop smells of ammonia and herbs, and you're ready to wince through this sour chapter of Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Chemical douches were a common contraceptive method in Victorian England, a mainstream fact tied to the era's obsession with hygiene. By the 1870s, women used syringes to flush the vagina with solutions like vinegar, alum, or even mercury-based compounds, hoping to prevent pregnancy. Sold in apothecaries as feminine washes, these were marketed with winks and euphemisms, but their safety was anyone's guess. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some douches included carbolic acid, a disinfectant so harsh it was also used to clean sewers. Imagine trusting your body to something that could scrub a drain. Historians still argue whether these brews were widely used or mostly a middle-class fad, but the apothecary's nervous buzz suggests they're flying off shelves. You slip inside, the bell jingling over the hum of customers. The air's sharp with chemicals, cutting through the usual lavender veneer, and you spot a woman in a high-collared dress, whispering to the chemist. She's after a hygienic syringe and a bottle labeled Dr. Bell's Purity Wash. You wince. That's probably alum and zinc sulfate, a mix that burns more than it protects. The chemist, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, slides the bottle over with a practiced nod, muttering about daily use. You think back to the fiddly cervical cap, all satin cases and precision. These douches are messier, riskier, like playing chemist in your own bathroom. Modern birth control pills sound like a spa day by comparison, don't they? The woman tucks the bottle into her basket, her face a mask of determination, and you feel a pang. She's betting on this brew to keep her family fed, not just clean. You notice a shelf of syringes, their brass nozzles gleaming like tiny cannons, and a pamphlet touting complete safety. You smirk. The fine print probably skips the part about mercury poisoning. The chemist's busy now, weighing powders for another customer, and you catch a whiff of something acrid. Carbolic acid, no doubt. You recall the vinegar-soaked sponges. Earthy and superstitious, these douches are colder, clinical, but no less a gamble. Jokes on the Victorians. Sewer cleaner as birth control? Bold move. You lean against a counter, watching the shop's rhythm. Women in shawls, men in bowlers, all dodging eye contact as they buy their washes. The fog outside presses against the windows, and you sense London's pulse, progress laced with peril, where every bottle's a secret rebellion. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their clear-cut justice, feel like a distant echo. This apothecary's a murkier court, dispensing hope and harm in equal measure. You imagine the woman at home, syringe in hand, praying the burn means it's working. The chemist's voice cuts through, warning about overuse, and you wonder how many heard that too late. You step back into the street. The bells jangle, fading behind you. The apothecary's glow lingers, a beacon in the fog, but its promises feel as shaky as the gaslights flicker. This chemical chapter's just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with rubber condoms, lunar pills, and spring-loaded patents. You hear a distant church bell, a reminder of the preachers who'd torch these bottles if they could. More curious inventions wait, maybe rhythm methods or mail-order tricks, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The fog curls tighter, the Thames whispers, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, stinging tale. You've stepped away from the apothecary's stinging chemical haze, the fog swallowing its amber glow as you wander London's damp streets. The gaslights flicker like tired eyes, and the air carries the briny whiff of the Thames, mixed with a faint sweetness. Horse dung and pie vendors, the city's odd perfume. You're drawn to a quiet coffee house, its windows steamed, where a group of women in high-necked dresses sip tea and whisper about the rhythm method, Victorian England's shaky attempt at scientific contraception. The place smells of brewed leaves and warm scones, and you're ready to ponder this calendar-based gamble in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. The rhythm method, though not called that yet, emerged in the 1870s as a mainstream fact tied to growing medical interest in fertility cycles. Victorian doctors, armed with early ovulation studies, suggested couples avoid certain days to prevent pregnancy, relying on charts and guesswork. It was free, church-approved, and sounded scientific, but wildly unreliable due to spotty biology knowledge. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some manuals advised women to track their safe days using moon phases, blending astronomy with anatomy in a way that feels more mystic than medical. Imagine squinting at a lunar almanac, hoping the crescent moons got your back. Historians still argue whether the rhythm method was a step toward empowerment or just a pious dodge, but the coffee house's hushed debate suggests it's a lifeline for some. You slip inside, the door's bell muffled by the fog. The air's cozy, thick with tea and buttery crumbs, and you find a corner near the women's table. One, a governess by her prim posture, clutches a notebook with penciled dates, her brow furrowed. She's explaining fertile windows to the others, citing a doctor's pamphlet that's probably half guesses. You wince. Victorian science was bold but shaky, like a steam engine with loose bolts. You think back to the carbolic douches, all burn and risk. The rhythm method's gentler, but good luck nailing the timing. Modern apps would have blown these women's minds, wouldn't they? Another woman, older, with a lace cap, scoffs softly, muttering about moon tides and safer nights. The table laughs, but you see the governess nod, her pencil hovering. Superstitions still here, clinging like fog to their charts. You catch a whiff of her tea, bergamot, sharp, and feel London's pulse, a city wrestling logic and lore, where even doctors lean on starlight when microscopes fail. Those Sumerian river ordeals, with their divine verdicts, feel like cousins to this lunar nonsense. Both eras trusted the cosmos when facts wobbled. You chuckle quietly, imagine pitching moon-based birth control to a gynecologist today. Waxing gibbous, you say? Fascinating. The governess flips her notebook, showing a grid of days marked safe or risky. You lean closer, catching phrases like cycle length and abstinence, and marvel at the discipline or desperation it takes. The other women listen, some skeptical, others scribbling notes. One jokes about her husband's patience, and the table giggles, but the tension's real. Every miscalculation's a baby in a tenement. You recall the cervical cap's fiddly precision, the sponge's vinegary sting. The rhythm method's simpler, but it's a tightrope over poverty and shame. The coffee house's warmth wraps you, but you sense the stakes, heavier than the fog outside. You notice a man at another table, reading a newspaper, his ear tilted toward the women. Spy or just nosy? In Victorian London, even tea talk could spark scandal. The governess lowers her voice, and you feel the city's invisible rules. Whisper, don't shout, plan, don't preach. Those clay tablets from Sumer's justice system are a faint echo. This coffee house is a courtroom of sorts, judging fertility by candlelight. Jokes on the church, though they approve this method. Unaware, it's sparking rebellion in every notebook. The women wrap up, tucking their secrets into reticules, and you're left with the hum of teaspoons and London's endless fog. You step outside, the coffee house's glow fading behind you. The rhythm method's just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with rubber condoms, toxic douches, and wild patents. The streets alive with a newsboy's cry and the rumble of carts, but the women's whispers linger. More curious inventions wait, maybe mail-order tricks or hidden sewing circle tips, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gas lights dim, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, charted tale. You slipped out of the coffee house, the governess's penciled charts and lunar whispers fading as you step back into London's fog-choked streets. The gaslights cast a sickly glow, and the air's thick with coal dust and the faint tang of ink from a nearby printer's shop. You're drawn to a dimly lit post office, its counter cluttered with parcels and a stack of catalogs that look innocent but hide a naughty secret. Mail-order contraceptives, peddled under the noses of Victorian censors. The place smells of wax seals and musty paper, and you're ready to flip through this sneaky chapter of Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Mail-order commerce boomed in the 1870s, a mainstream fact fueled by Britain's expanding postal system and a growing middle class hungry for discreet purchases. Contraceptives, condoms, caps, even dubious pills, were sold through catalogs, disguised as hygiene or marital aid guides, shipped in plain wrappers to dodge prying eyes. Vendors exploited loopholes in obscenity laws, making birth control a click away. Well, a postage stamp away. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some catalogs offered rubber novelties with winking descriptions, like a condom listed as a gentleman's raincoat. Imagine blushing at your mailbox, hoping the postman's clueless. Historians still argue whether mail-order empowered consumers or just enriched shady dealers, but the post office's bustle screams opportunity. You sidle up to the counter where a clerk with ink-stained fingers sorts letters, oblivious to the catalog you've snagged from a pile. Its cover's bland, household goods, but inside it's a treasure trove of euphemisms. Ladies' protectors, hygienic syringes, even preventative powders that sound like quackery's greatest hits. You stifle a grin. Victorians were masters of the nudge-nudge, weren't they? You think back to the Rhythm Method's shaky charts. This mail-order world's bolder, delivering solutions straight to your door. No apothecary awkwardness required. Modern online shopping's got nothing on this stealth, does it? You flip to a page advertising seamless rubber sheaths, clearly condoms, priced at $1 a dozen. The ad promises discretion guaranteed, and you imagine a nervous couple in a Brixton flat waiting for their plain brown parcel. Another listing hawks a female syringe with a brass nozzle, suspiciously like the ones in the apothecary's back room. You wince, recalling the carbolic douche's burn. These mail-order versions probably aren't safer, just easier to hide. The catalog's last page offers consultations by post, where you send symptoms and get a custom tonic. You chuckle softly. It's Dr. Percival's lunar pills, just with better shipping. Scam or not, it's genius. The post office hums. Clerks stamp envelopes. A woman mails a parcel. A boy sweeps the floor. You notice a man in a bowler hat eyeing the same catalog pile, his fingers twitching. Customer or censor, Victorian postal inspectors were no joke, sniffing out obscene goods to slap vendors with fines. You feel London's pulse, a city of secrets where every letter's a potential scandal. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their public punishments, feel like a distant cousin. This mail-order game's all about shadows, dodging the law while meeting a need. Jokes on the censors, though for every seized parcel, 10 more slip through, landing in eager hands. You tuck the catalog under your arm. Not buying, just curious, and step back into the fog. The clerk's too busy to notice, and you wonder how many household goods are crossing London tonight. The street's alive with a newsboy's shout and the rattle of a milk cart, but the catalog's secrets linger, a thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with sponges, patents, and moonlit rhythms. You recall the preacher's rants, the chemist's discreet caps, mail orders just another rebellion, quieter but no less bold. More curious inventions wait, maybe women's whispers or church clashes, and you're ready to chase them through London's alleys, where every parcel's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights flicker, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, paper-bound tale. You've left the post office's sneaky catalogs behind, their winking raincoats tucked away as you weave through London's fog-draped streets. The gaslights hum, casting pools of light on wet cobblestones, and the air's sharp with coal smoke and a faint whiff of lavender from a passing flower girl. You're drawn to a modest drawing room in a terraced house where a group of women gather under the guise of a book club, their voices low as they share contraceptive secrets. This is where Victorian women's voices rise, quietly but fiercely, advocating for better options in a world that shushes them. The room smells of wax candles and stale tea, and you're ready to listen in on this hushed rebellion in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Women's advocacy for birth control, though often underground, was a growing force in the 1870s, a mainstream fact tied to early feminist movements. Figures like Annie Besant and Charles Bradlaugh, though controversial, publicized family planning through trials and pamphlets, inspiring women to demand control over their bodies. These discussions happened in private spaces, drawing rooms, sewing circles, where women swapped tips and frustrations. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some women used coded language, calling contraceptives Auntie's remedy or the charm, to dodge eavesdroppers. Imagine whispering about Auntie while passing the biscuits, Victorian espionage at its coziest. Historians still argue whether these efforts sparked real change or stayed whispers in the shadows, but the drawing room's intensity says they mattered. You slip closer to the window, the glass cool against your cheek. Inside, the women sit in a circle, a novel open for show, but their talk's all business. One, a seamstress with ink-stained fingers, describes a rubber cap she got from a progressive midwife, praising its reuse but cursing its fiddly fit. You think back to the mail-order syringes, all brass and bravado. This cap's simpler, but still a hassle. The seamstress's voice is firm, urging the others to seek reliable sources over quack tonics. You stifle a grin. She's the group's unofficial general, rallying against lunar pills and carbolic burns. Modern forums owe these women a nod, don't they? Another woman, younger, with a nervous laugh, asks about sponges, mentioning the vinegar trick from that parlor you spied on. The seamstress nods but warns about over-soaking, and you wince, imagining the sting. A third, older, with a lace shawl, brings up the charm, code for a cervical cap, and the room leans in, hungry for details. You catch a whiff of candle wax, mingling with the tea's bergamot, and feel London's pulse, a city where women carve out power in whispers, defying preachers and nosy neighbors. Those Sumerian tablets, with their public shaming, feel worlds away. This room's a secret court, judging society's rules by firelight. You chuckle softly, imagine the vicar's face if he heard Auntie's remedy. The younger woman jots notes, her pencil scratching like a conspirator. You notice a pamphlet tucked under her chair, probably smuggled from a Besant lecture, its title coy, Family Wisdom. It's no novel, but it's their Bible tonight. The seamstress lowers her voice, warning about police raids on contraceptive sellers, and you recall the post office's risky parcels. These women aren't just chatting, they're strategizing. building a network in a city that'd rather they knit in silence. Jokes on the patriarchs, though every whisper's a crack in their prim facade, and these cracks are spreading. The meeting wraps up, the women hiding their notes in reticules and resuming book talk as a maid enters. You step back, the fog swallowing the window's glow. The drawing room's secrets linger, a thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with rubber condoms, toxic douches, and shaky rhythms. The street's quiet, save for a distant cart's rumble and the Thames murmur. You wonder how many other rooms hold such whispers, how many women are plotting their freedom. More curious inventions wait, maybe church clashes or courtroom dramas, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its blushing buttoned-up heart. The gaslights dim, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, whispered tale. You've slipped away from the drawing room's whispered rebellion, the women's coded charms fading as you step back into London's fog-soaked streets. The gaslights flicker, their light swallowed by mist, and the air carries the damp chill of the Thames, mixed with a faint whiff of candle wax from a nearby church. You're drawn to a grand cathedral, its spire piercing the haze, where a red-faced vicar thunders from the pulpit against the sin of contraception. The scent of incense and polished pews fills the air, and you're ready to witness the church's clash with Victorian England's contraceptive progress. A battle of sermons versus secrets in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. The church wielded massive influence in Victorian England, a mainstream fact shaping moral debates in the 1870s. Clergy, backed by Anglican doctrine, condemned birth control as unnatural, arguing it defied God's plan for procreation and fueled immorality. Sermons and pamphlets railed against artificial checks, targeting reformers like Annie Besant and devices like rubber condoms. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some vicars claimed contraceptives were cursed, causing spiritual barrenness or even divine wrath like lightning strikes on users. Imagine dodging thunderbolts for buying a cervical cap, Victorian fear-mongering at its wildest. Historians still argue whether the church's stance slowed contraceptive adoption or just drove it underground. But the cathedral's fervor suggests a fight to the finish. You slip into a pew, the wood creaking under you, and the air's heavy with frankincense and righteous anger. The vicar, his jowls quivering, brandishes a pamphlet, probably Besant's Law of Population, calling it diabolical. The congregation murmurs, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Likely hiding mail-order syringes in their reticules, you think back to the drawing room's fierce whispers, the women plotting over tea. This sermon's their enemy, loud and unyielding. You stifle a grin, the vicar's shouting about natural duties, while half his flocks probably tried a vinegar sponge. Modern debates have nothing on this pulpit drama, do they? The vicar's sermon pivots to depravity, blaming contraceptives for everything from divorce to declining church attendance. You catch a whiff of a lady's lavender perfume, sharp against the incense, and notice her fidgeting. She's heard enough. You recall the post office's sneaky catalogs, their gentlemen's raincoats dodging censors. The church can't stop what's mailed in plain wrappers. The vicar's voice rises, warning of eternal consequences. And you chuckle softly. His cursed lightning sounds like a Sumerian myth, like demons chasing thieves. Both eras loved their divine scare tactics, didn't they? But London's too practical, too crowded for sermons to win outright. You glance at the congregation. Men in stiff collars, women in bonnets, all masking their thoughts. A young couple near you exchanges a look, maybe thinking of their tenement and too many mouths. The vicar's words, "Be fruitful and multiply," hit like a slap, but their eyes say they've got a rubber cap hidden at home. You feel London's pulse, faith wrestling necessity, with progress slipping through the cracks. Those clay tablets from Sumer, with their public punishments, feel like a distant echo. This cathedral's a courtroom of guilt, but it's losing grip. Jokes on the vicar, his flock's already whispering Auntie's remedy behind his back. The sermon ends, the organ groaning to life, and you slip out as the congregation rises. The fog greets you, curling around the cathedral's stone, and you hear the vicar's voice linger, drowned by the city's hum. Cartwheels, a newsboy's shout, the Thames murmur. The church's fight is just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with lunar pills, mail-order tricks, and women's quiet defiance. You wonder how many in that pew tried the rhythm method, church-approved but shaky, or smuggled a sponge past the vicar's wrath. More curious inventions wait, maybe sewing circle secrets or courtroom clashes, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a rebellion against its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights dim, the fog thickens, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, sermon-soaked tale. You've slipped out of the cathedral, the vicar's thunderous sermon fading into the fog as you wander London's damp, gaslit streets. The air's thick with coal smoke and the faint sweetness of spilled ale from a nearby pub, and your boots splash through puddles reflecting the moon. You're drawn to a cozy terraced house, its parlor glowing with candlelight, where a group of women gather under the pretense of a sewing circle. Needles flash, but the real work is their whispered exchange of contraceptive tips, a secret network thriving in Victorian England's shadows. The room smells of starch and chamomile tea, and you're ready to peek into this hushed rebellion in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Sewing circles were key hubs for Victorian women's networks, a mainstream fact rooted in the 1870s, gendered social spaces. While men debated in clubs, women used these gatherings to share practical knowledge, including birth control methods like sponges or cervical caps, often passed down from midwives or reformers. These circles were safe havens, hidden behind domestic facades, where women could speak freely without fear of preachers or prying husbands. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some women hid contraceptive devices in their sewing baskets, tucking rubber caps among spools of thread. Imagine fishing out a pessary while stitching a hem. Victorian multitasking at its sneakiest. Historians still argue whether these circles were widespread or limited to urban pockets, but the parlor's conspiratorial hum says they're vital. You ease closer to the window, the glass fogged with warmth. Inside, a woman with a sharp bobbin hand demonstrates how to soak a sponge in vinegar and lemon, her voice low but confident. The others, dressmakers, maids, a governess, lean in, their needles paused. You catch a whiff of the tea, floral against the starch, and think back to the drawing room's Auntie's remedy code. This circle's bolder, naming devices outright. The sponge trick echoes that earlier parlor, but here they're also swapping names of discreet chemists, not just moonlit folklore. You stifle a grin. These women are running a black market in petticoats. Modern group chats owe them a salute, don't they? The governess, her spectacles glinting, mentions a rubber cap she got via mail order, praising its fit but cursing the cost. You recall the post office's sly catalogs, their ladies' protectors shipped in plain wrappers. These women are tapping that network, dodging the vicar's lightning curses. Another, a maid with calloused hands, shares a cheaper trick, a wool tampon dipped in alum. Risky but affordable. You wince alum's harsh, like the apothecary's carbolic douches, but desperation doesn't care about comfort. The room's a mix of hope and grit, every tip a shield against tenement cribs and social shame. You chuckle softly. Imagine explaining alum tampons to a doctor today. Budget-friendly, but ouch. You notice a basket overflowing with thread, a silk pouch peeking out, probably hiding a cap or syringe. The women's voices drop as a knock sounds, and they switch to chatting about embroidery, fooling the maid who pokes her head in. You feel London's pulse, secrecy woven into every stitch, defiance tucked in every basket. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their public justice, feel like a distant echo. This parlor's a covert court, ruling on survival by candlelight. Jokes on the men preaching propriety, these women are rewriting the rules, one whispered tip at a time. The fog presses against the glass, and you sense the stakes. Every secret's a gamble, but silence means surrender. The circle resumes as the maid leaves, needles clicking like a code. The governess pulls out a pamphlet, likely smuggled from a Besant rally, and reads a line about family choice. The others nod, their faces fierce, and you marvel at their nerve. You think of the cathedral's sermons, the patent office's wild springs. Victorian contraception's a tapestry of faith, failure, and fight, with sewing circles as its quiet heart. The streets still, save for a distant dog's bark, and the Thames murmur. More curious inventions wait. Maybe courtroom dramas or sly ads, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a rebellion against its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights dim, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, needle-sharp tale. You've left the sewing circle's whispered secrets behind, the clink of needles fading as you step back into London's fog-drenched streets. The gaslights sputter, their glow barely cutting through the mist, and the air's heavy with the tang of wet wool and a faint whiff of tar from the Thames. You're drawn to a smoky courtroom, its oak benches packed with spectators buzzing like flies over a fresh scandal. Here, Victorian England's war on contraception plays out, with sellers of condoms and sponges facing the law's wrath. The room smells of polish and nervous sweat, and you're ready to sit in on this legal drama in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Obscenity trials were a harsh reality in the 1870s, a mainstream fact tied to Victorian England's strict moral laws. The Obscene Publications Act of 1857 gave courts power to seize and fine anything deemed indecent, including contraceptive devices and pamphlets, often targeting reformers like Annie Besant or vendors caught with mail-order catalogs. These trials weren't just about law, they were public spectacles, meant to shame and deter. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some defendants claimed their condoms were for surgical use or waterproofing, dodging charges with straight-faced lies. Imagine a lawyer arguing that a rubber sheath's for umbrellas, Victorian creativity at its peak. Historians still argue whether these trials curbed contraception or just fueled its underground demand, but the courtroom's tension screams backlash. You squeeze onto a bench, the wood creaking, and the air's thick with ink and murmured bets on the verdict. The defendant, a wiry chemist with a twitching mustache, stands accused of selling immoral articles, likely those mail-order syringes you saw earlier. The prosecutor waves a rubber cap, brandishing it like a murder weapon, and the crowd gasps, half shocked, half thrilled. You think back to the sewing circle's hidden pouches, the women dodging this very fate. The chemist's defense is flimsy, muttering about hygienic purposes, and you stifle a grin. He's no umbrella salesman, that's for sure. Modern court dramas have nothing on this prudish circus, do they? The judge, a sour man in a powdered wig, lectures on decency, his voice echoing off the paneling. You catch a whiff of a spectator's pipe smoke, sharp against the polish, and notice a woman in the gallery, her bonnet low. She's probably a user, not a gawker. Praying, the chemist walks free. You recall the cathedral's sermons, the vicar's lightning curses. This courtroom's their legal arm, crushing progress to please the pious. The prosecutor reads from a seized catalogue, stumbling over gentleman's raincoat, and the crowd snickers. You chuckle softly. Victorians were so prim. Yet here's a lawyer blushing over code words. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their public shaming, feel like cousins to this spectacle. Both loved a good show. The chemists find a hefty sum, his shop likely ruined, and you feel a pang. He's no hero, but his wares helped women like those in the sewing circle, dodging tenement cribs. The crowd's mixed. Some cheer the verdict, others mutter about busybody laws. You spot a journalist scribbling, probably for a penny paper that'll sell the scandal. The fog outside presses against the windows, and you sense London's pulse, a city split between order and need, where every trial's a warning, but also a spark. Jokes on the judge for every chemist caught. 10 more catalogues slip through, fueling the rebellion in plain wrappers. You slip out as the gavel falls, the courtroom's buzz fading behind you. The streets alive with a newsboy's cry and the clatter of a passing omnibus, but the chemist's fate lingers, a thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with lunar pills, rubber caps, and whispered tips. You wonder how many spectators will buy from the next vendor, undeterred by fines. More curious inventions wait, maybe doctors' debates or sneaky ads, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights flicker, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, gavel-struck tale. You've left the courtroom's gavel and scandal behind, the chemist's fine still ringing in your ears, as you step back into London's fog-soaked streets. The gaslights cast feeble halos, and the air's thick with the damp chill of the Thames. Laced with a faint whiff of pipe tobacco from a passing gentleman, you're drawn to a grand medical hall, its oak-paneled walls echoing with the heated debates of Victorian doctors grappling with the ethics of contraception. The hall smells of polished wood and antiseptic, and you're ready to listen in on this cerebral clash in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Medical debates over contraception were intense in the 1870s, a mainstream fact tied to the professionalization of medicine. As the British Medical Association grew, doctors argued over whether prescribing devices like cervical caps or advising on the rhythm method was ethical, pitting science against morality. Some saw birth control as a public health tool to curb poverty. Others called it a gateway to vice, echoing the church's sermons. Here's the quirky tidbit. One doctor, in a published letter, suggested contraceptives caused nervous debility in women, claiming they disrupted natural energies. Imagine diagnosing a condom as a mood killer, Victorian quackery in a stethoscope. Historians still argue whether these debates advanced medical practice or just mirrored society's prudery, but the hall's fervor suggests a turning point. You slip into a back row, the benches creaking under frock-coated men scribbling notes. The air's warm, heavy with cigar smoke, and a doctor with mutton chops lectures at a podium, arguing that contraception undermines marital sanctity. His rival, a younger physician with a sharper gaze, counters that limiting births saves lives in tenement slums. You think back to the sewing circle's sponge tips, the courtroom's condemned chemist. This debate's their backdrop, shaping what's sold or shunned. You stifle a grin. These doctors sound like they're arguing over dynamite, not rubber caps. Modern ethics boards would eat this drama for breakfast, wouldn't they? The younger doctor brandishes a pamphlet, likely Annie Besant's, citing statistics on infant mortality. The room bristles. Some nod, others hiss. You catch a whiff of the mutton chop doctor's cologne, cloying against the antiseptic, and notice a few women in the audience, probably nurses, their faces unreadable. You recall the mail-order catalogs, their sly raincoats. These physicians could make or break that trade with a single paper. The mutton chop doctor pivots, warning of debility from devices like pessaries, and you chuckle softly. His nervous energy theories as shaky as the rhythm method's moon charts. Those Sumerian myths of cursed thieves feel like kin to this medical mysticism. Both lean on fear when facts falter. The younger doctor pushes back, advocating for scientific family planning, a phrase that draws gasps. He mentions rubber condoms, discreetly, and you imagine the courtroom prosecutor fainting. The debate's not just academic, it's personal, deciding what women like the sewing circle's governess can access. You feel London's pulse, a city of progress and prejudice where every argument's a gamble. The hall's windows are fogged, shutting out the street's omnibus clatter, and you sense the stakes. Doctors hold power, but patients hold need. Jokes on the old guard, their debility fears, can't stop a city desperate for solutions, slipping through apothecaries and plain wrappers. You slip out as the debate rages, the hall's heat fading into the fog. The doctor's words linger, a thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with lunar pills, toxic douches, and courtroom fines. The street hums, a newsboy's shout, a horse's snort, and you wonder how many doctors secretly prescribe those immoral caps. More curious inventions wait, maybe newspaper ads or exotic imports, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights flicker, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar oak-paneled tale. You've left the medical halls, heated debates behind, the doctor's cigar smoke and ethical sparring fading as you step back into London's fog-drenched streets. The gaslights flicker, casting eerie halos on the cobblestones, and the air's thick with the briny tang of the Thames, and a faint whiff of newsprint from a nearby vendor. You're drawn to a cluttered newsstand, its papers flapping in the breeze, where sly contraceptive ads hide in plain sight, tucked between notices for soap and corsets. The stand smells of ink and damp paper, and you're ready to uncover this sneaky chapter in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Advertising for contraceptives, though risky, was a growing trend in the 1870s, a mainstream fact tied to Victorian England's booming print culture. Newspapers and magazines, desperate for revenue, ran veiled ads for hygienic goods or ladies' preventatives, often worded to skirt obscenity laws like the one that snared the courtroom chemist. These ads reached thousands, from tenement wives to country squires, spreading word of condoms and syringes under censors' noses. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some ads used coded phrases like French letters for condoms, a cheeky nod to Gallic decadence that made readers smirk. Imagine spotting French letters over breakfast tea, Victorian wordplay at its sauciest. Historians still argue whether these ads normalized contraception or just invited more crackdowns, but the newsstand's bustle suggests they're hitting their mark. You sidle up to the stand. The vendor, a grizzled man with ink-stained fingers, hawking papers to passing clerks. You snag a copy of a penny weekly, its pages crisp, and flip to the classifieds. There, nestled between a tonic for weak nerves and a sewing machine ad, is a notice for Dr. Hart's marital safeguard, promising discreet delivery. You stifle a grin. It's a condom or cap, no doubt, mailed in a plain wrapper like those post office catalogs. You think back to the sewing circle's sponge tips, the doctor's nervous debates. This ad's their public cousin, bold yet coy. Modern pop-ups have nothing on this sneaky hustle, do they? Another ad catches your eye, touting Madame Leclerc's female solution, a syringe or douche with Parisian elegance. You wince, recalling the apothecary's carbolic burns. Parisian or not, it's probably just as harsh. The vendor's watching, so you keep flipping, but you spot a third ad for Gentlemen's Protectors, winking with that French letter phrase. You chuckle softly. Victorians were so prim, yet here's a paper flirting with scandal in black and white. The fog curls around the stand, and you feel London's pulse, a city of secrets where every newsboy's cry carries rebellion. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their public laws, feel like a distant echo. These ads are whispers, dodging judges and vicars alike. You notice a woman in a plain shawl linger at the stand, her eyes scanning the same weekly. She buys it, tucking it under her arm, and you bet she's memorizing that marital safeguard address. A man in a bowler hat grabs another copy, his glance furtive. Maybe he's after the French letters. The vendor's too busy shouting headlines to care, but you sense the risk one nosy censor, and these ads could land in court. You recall the courtroom's gavel, the chemist's ruin. These advertisers are playing a dangerous game, but need keeps the ink flowing. Jokes on the authorities for every paper seized. 10 more circulate, spreading secrets to every corner of London. You step back, the newsstand's clamor fading into the fog. The paper's still in your hand, its ads a quiet revolt against the cathedral's sermons and the doctor's doubts. This newsprint chapter's just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with lunar pills, rubber caps, and sewing circle whispers. The street hums, a cart's rattle, a drunk's song, and you wonder how many readers will write to Dr. Hart tonight. More curious inventions wait, maybe global imports or women's bolder moves, and you're ready to chase them through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gas lights dim, the fog curls tighter, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, ink-stained tale. You've left the newsstand's inky bustle behind, the sly, French letter ads crinkling in your mind as you step back into London's fog-soaked streets. The gaslights sputter, their glow swallowed by mist, and the air's heavy with the briny whiff of the Thames, and a faint tang of spices from a dockside warehouse. You're drawn to a busy port where ships creak under the weight of crates stamped with far-off names. Calcutta, Cairo, Canton. Among the tea and silks, exotic contraceptive ideas are slipping into Victorian England, carried by sailors and traders. The dock smells of tar and salt, and you're ready to trace these global threads in Ur's blushing, smoky saga. Victorian Britain's empire connected it to contraceptive practices worldwide. a mainstream fact rooted in the 1870s global trade boom. Colonized regions like India and Egypt, plus trade partners like China, introduced methods, herbal pessaries, silk condoms, intricate douches, that intrigued English doctors and reformers. These imports, often smuggled or sold discreetly, added new flavors to London's contraceptive scene, though they came with colonial biases. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Indian herbal suppositories, made from neem or cottonseed, were marketed as Ayurvedic secrets, but Victorians often diluted them into useless teas. Thinking they were sipping ancient wisdom, imagine brewing a fertility blocker like it's Earl Grey. Cultural mishap much. Historians still argue whether these imports influenced mainstream contraception or stayed niche curiosities. But the port's chaos suggests they're making waves. You weave through the dock, dodging barrels and shouting stevedores, the air thick with hemp and sweat. A merchant in a faded turban unpacks a crate, revealing silk pouches labeled Oriental Preventatives. You stifle a grin. Those are probably condoms, thinner than London's rubber ones, sold with a wink to sailors. You think back to the newsstand's French letters. These silks are their global cousins, slipping past censors in cargo holds. The merchant mutters about Cairo's finest, and you spot a vial of oily paste, likely an Egyptian pessary, touted for feminine balance. You wince. It's safer than carbolic douches, but good luck with the application. Modern global markets have nothing on this spicy trade, do they? A sailor, sunburned and swaying, haggles for a pouch, claiming it's better than London's rubber. You catch a whiff of his rum-soaked breath, sharp against the tar, and wonder if he's tried the Sewing Circle's vinegar sponges. The merchant's cagey, eyeing a passing customs officer, and you feel London's pulse, a city hungry for novelty, where every ship's a smuggler's chance. Those Sumerian clay tablets, with their rigid laws, feel like a distant echo. This port's a lawless bazaar, blending cultures in every crate. You chuckle softly, imagine the vicar's face if he saw these Oriental silks in his parish. Divine lightning incoming. You notice a woman in a plain cloak, likely a midwife, inspecting a jar of neem paste. She's probably heard of its Indian use and wants to test it on desperate clients. You recall the drawing room's auntie's remedy whispers. These imports could be their next secret weapon if they work. The dock's alive with shouts, Hindi, Arabic, Cantonese, and you sense the stakes. Every import's a gamble, blending promise with prejudice. Jokes on the colonizers, though they're learning from the exotics they claim to rule, and London's contraceptive game is richer for it. The fog curls around the masts, and you marvel at this global crossroads where silk meets rubber and neem meets nonsense. You step back, the port's clamor fading into the Thames murmur. The merchant's crate is nearly empty, his pouches headed for apothecaries or back alley deals. This global chapter's just one thread in Victorian England's contraceptive tapestry, woven with lunar pills, courtroom fines, and sewing circle grit. You hear a ship's bell, sharp in the mist, and wonder how many docks hold such secrets. One more curious chapter waits, maybe a final reflection on this foggy rebellion, and you're ready to chase it through London's shadows, where every secret's a defiance of its prim, blushing heart. The gaslights dim, the fog thickens, and you walk on, drawn deeper into this peculiar, spice-scented tale. You've left the port's exotic bustle behind, the tang of neem and silk fading as you wander back through London's fog-draped streets. The gaslights are nearly out, their glow a faint whisper against the mist, and the air carries the soft murmur of the Thames, mingled with the distant clink of a milk cart. You're drawn to a quiet overlook, where the city sprawls below, chimneys, spires, and shadowed alleys, inviting you to reflect on Victorian England's curious contraceptive inventions. The night's calm, smelling of damp stone and fading coal, and you're ready to weave together this final thread in Ur's blushing, smoky saga, letting London's secrets settle into rest. Victorian contraception was a bold response to a changing world, a mainstream fact rooted in the 1870s, social and industrial shifts. From rubber condoms to cervical caps, these inventions tackled overpopulation and poverty, defying a society that preached propriety while tenements overflowed. They weren't perfect, often clumsy, sometimes dangerous, but they laid the groundwork for modern birth control, driven by necessity and nerve. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some women kept contraceptive diaries, jotting coded notes about sponges or rhythm days, hidden in recipe books. Imagine scribbling vinegar soak next to plum pudding. Victorian secrecy at its coziest. Historians still argue whether these efforts empowered individuals or just patched a broken system, but as you stand here, London's fog whispers of quiet triumphs. You lean against a railing, the city's hum softening, crickets, a far-off bell, the river's sigh. You think of the apothecary's rubber caps, the sewing circle's sponge tips, the port's neem paste, each a defiance of the vicar's sermons and courtroom gavels, the mail order, French letters, the lunar pills, the bellows-powered patents. They're a tapestry of grit and absurdity, woven by people who dared to plan their futures. You smile softly. Those Sumerian thieves, shamed by honey ants, would have marveled at London's subtle rebellions. Jokes on the censors, every hygienic ad, every whispered auntie's remedy, chipped away at their prim control. Modern freedom owes these pioneers a nod, doesn't it? The fog curls around you, muffling the last omnibus's rumble. You recall the drawing room's fierce whispers, the doctor's oak-paneled doubts, the newsstand's sly ads, each a spark in a city both blushing and bold. These inventions weren't just devices, they were choices, carved out in shadows while gaslights burned. You wonder how many women, like the shawl-clad midwife at the dock, carried these secrets home, their diaries filling with hope and risk. The stars peek through the mist, sharp as the stakes, and you feel London's pulse slow, its contraceptive saga fading into the night's embrace. Now, as London's fog thickens and the gaslights dim, let your thoughts drift like the Thames' gentle ripples. Picture the city's alleys, quiet under starlight, its apothecaries and parlors tucked into sleep, the condoms, sponges, and whispered diaries. They're resting, folded into Victorian England's vast, smoky story. Feel your breath ease, slow as the sway of a docked ship, each worry slipping away like fog over the river. The women's courage, the inventor's quirks, the preacher's rants, they're just echoes now, soft as a candle's flicker, fading into the night's warm hush. Let the weight of the day dissolve, your mind light as a silk pouch, carried on London's dreamy tide. Rest now, safe in the quiet, and let the world spin softly on. Sweet dreams.